Hello and welcome back to everyone that's tuned in to the American Ultra Stock channel. Thank you so much for being here. Special thank you to all of you who have been across this journey we're in. Even you who hasn't subscribed yet to the channel, if you can please hit that button, we would really appreciate it. We are unfortunately out. We got grouped, the USMNT grouped, with possibly some good consequences out of that. More on that later on future videos, but we're here to do something else. We're going to be recapping the group stage of Copa America. I really like how only two go through, kind of throwing some shade at the Euros, but looking at right here, going group by group. On Group A, Braden, any surprises there? Also, if you can mention our predictions, how we thought this would go out. Canada pulls through. Do you see that as a huge surprise? Your main takeaways for both teams who will try to go as far as they can in the tournament?
Yeah, well, first of all, happy 4th of July to all of our American viewers watching, which, I mean, based on previous videos, is probably the entire audience. If anyone from England is watching somehow, happy Election Day. But yeah, I think Group A was probably the most boring group just because, I mean, there was only 6 goals scored, and 5 of them were all by the same team. Argentina basically dominated everybody, as we thought they would. I mean, they were the pre-tournament favorites going into a pretty straightforward group, I would say. I mean, they got the job done, and shout out to Lautaro Martinez. Both of our picks for Golden Boot coming off the bench, and he's still getting it done. 4 goals, 5 goals. He has a 2-goal advantage now in the Golden Boot race, making us look like geniuses there. But speaking of looking like geniuses, you actually predicted Canada to go through. I was not so smart, clearly, picking Chile. I think that final game was, despite being a 0-0, I thought it was very exciting, and I think Chile probably feel a little hard done by because if they hadn't gotten reduced to 10 men so early in the game, I think they had a very real chance of going through. They needed a win in that match, and even after getting Suazo sent off, they were still pushing for the goal. I mean, they were still the better team for a decent chunk of the game, which maybe the USMNT need to take notes from them based on that, how to play with a man down. But ultimately, Canada did get the job done, got it over the line, with huge thanks to the goalkeeper, Maxime Crepeau. What a performance from him, not just in this game, but all of them. I think he was probably the biggest surprise for me, maybe in the entire tournament, honestly, but especially in this group. Huge performance from the Portland Timbers goalkeeper, really showed his worth. And I think ultimately there was a lot of good performances from the Canadians, especially at the back, which is surprising for a team that is managed by Jesse Marsh. You would expect for all the focus to be going forward. But I think Crepeau almost single-handedly kept his team in the tournament. And huge props to them. Huge props to Jesse Marsh as well, getting one over on his rival Greg Berhalter. So I'm happy for him at least in terms of that. I mean, I think that's basically all that there is to discuss about this group. I mean, Argentina, very easy for them. Peru, they did what we all thought. In hindsight, Chile probably should have beaten Peru, and then maybe they would have had a chance. I mean, they would have actually gone through on goal difference if they did. But at the end of the day, Canada got it done. Congrats to you, Yuri, and everybody else who predicted Canada. It seems like I was in the minority for predicting them to go out, and I guess rightly so.
Yeah, well, I will say it was down to a very, very fine, the finest of margins, you could point it out. So I don't think we deserve too much credit for all the folks that predicted Canada to go through. But hey, props to Jesse Marsh, because I think he's doing what I think national team coaches need to do: adapt your style to the players you have. It's not like you can sign anybody. You can't really change the player pool. So props to him on that. And isn't it nice when a goalkeeper makes saves that he shouldn't make? I feel like we haven't had that in a while besides the Brazil game. But moving on to Group B right here, can we just say again, emphasize how easy that top bracket is? I mean, Argentina have a walk to the final. But anyways, this was the toughest group to predict. I think you mentioned it, and we saw in actuality how hard it was to predict this group because everyone had a shouting chance. Ultimately, our friends from south of the border did get grouped as well. Maybe a silver lining for some USMNT fans. Thoughts on this group? Were you surprised that Venezuela got to top the group, Braden?
Yeah, like you said, this was definitely the toughest group to predict. And case in point, in our prediction challenge, I will have some updates with that towards the end of the video. But there were 17 entries, including both of ours. This was the only group out of the four that every single team had at least one person, or actually multiple, I think, predict them to go through and even top the group. Every single team, I think, maybe besides Venezuela, who were actually the team who ended up topping it, had a prediction to top the group, which was kind of insane, really. Huge props to them. I mean, I backed them to go through. I backed them to finish second behind Ecuador. I think Ecuador disappointed, but again, it's a similar situation, and I think we've been seeing this a little too much in Copa America. It's basically the Euros on crack. It's just a street fight, really. And I mean, we saw that Ecuador had a red card early in the game against Venezuela, and ultimately they ended up losing because of that. And you could argue that maybe that cost them the group, because I think if they had something to fight for, if they had first place on the line against Mexico in the last game, they probably would have gotten the job done, gotten it over the line, and finished top. But at the end of the day, huge props to Venezuela. I was a believer in them to maybe do a little bit better than anticipated, but I didn't think they'd go perfect 9 points and potentially be even one of the best teams in the entire group stage. So huge props to them, and my Union boy Jose Martinez. Great performance. He was the one who drew the red card as well. But I'm very much looking forward to that clash against Canada. I think that's going to be the most exciting to watch for a neutral, just because it's so unpredictable. I mean, it's two underdogs going at it. For the rest of the group, Jamaica, unfortunately for them, I mean, we know they have the talent, but there's not much to discuss. I mean, they kind of got embarrassed in every game. They had a respectable showing against Mexico, but at the end of the day, couldn't get the job done, only scored one goal. Ecuador versus Mexico, I mean, we know that came down to the wire, kind of like Chile, Canada, and the same result at the end of the day, finishing 0-0 in that game. There was a lot of penalty calls from the Mexican side. Maybe they should have had at least one, considering that there was like four different shouts that were arguable, especially one in stoppage time in the 90th minute that was initially given on the field and then reversed by VAR. So there was definitely no shortage of controversy in this group, and that just speaks to how insane Copa America is in general. But Ecuador did get the job done against the run of play, maybe, but they held out for the draw. They stayed disciplined. Their good defense that they've shown for a while now finally showed up, because I think it has to be said, they didn't really do that in the prior two matches, but when it mattered most, they did, and they did enough to get through. It's just unlucky for them that they wasted some chances, because now they have to go up against Argentina in the next rounds.
Yeah, I think they're the biggest underperformers out of the clubs that were, well, besides us, really, that were supposed to really have a go and perhaps be the fifth force in this tournament. I saw some people, the guys that give and go, they highlighted this. I think everyone was expecting a little bit more from Ecuador. Ultimately, I think that Mexico, if I was Mexican, I would feel hard done by. I feel like one of the penalties, the last one particularly, I could completely understand if he gave it away, but unfortunately, what happened happened. And shout out to Liam Bailey as well, who tried to come back on his choice and only wanted to join the tournament in the second match. Allegedly, that's what he wanted to do. He had a wedding to go to, and so he wanted to play Copa America from the second match onward. So, I mean, at that point, it sums up that federation. But moving on to Group C, the saddest group, obviously. We unfortunately somehow, unbelievable. I'm actually curious if anybody predicted us to get grouped in this one out of the comment section. It's unbelievable. But Uruguay and Panama make it through. I mean, I'm going to ask you, any shockers there? I think we all know, but if you want to highlight what led to that.
I mean, as you said, I think it's a perfect transition, because I was actually going to point out this was the only group that every single person in our challenge got wrong, because every single person predicted the USA to go through, obviously ourselves included. Some people even had the USA top the group, not naming names, Yuri, but a couple misdirections there. I mean, we've covered all of the USMNT games extensively with previews, reactions to the game, and they've got done very well. So shout out to the US for consistently underperforming, because it seems to always bring more views, because, I mean, there's something to yell about. But I think the biggest takeaway from this group that we didn't know already is that Panama are legit. And I mean, I've been saying it for a while now, that they're not to be underestimated. I've been very high on their team. Coco Carrasquilla in particular, even though he did get that stupid red card against the US, I think he was the difference maker for them, especially in the first two games. He created so many chances, and I think they did end up missing him a little bit against Bolivia. I mean, the game was 1-1 at one point. They had to leave it a little bit late to get the result and go through at the end of the day. But I mean, I think Thomas Christensen, their manager, is doing such an incredible job with this program. He's turned them into arguably a top two team in CONCACAF. I mean, it's crazy to say, but if you look at Copa America, they made it out. Canada made it out. Mexico, Jamaica, the U.S., Costa Rica, all got grouped. So there's definitely an argument to be had for Panama. And I think it is unfortunate. I mean, I think I may have highlighted this in a previous video, but I think they're not going to get the credit they deserve just because all of the mainstream media attention is going to be on the USMNT and how we underperformed, not giving as much credit to Panama. Sure, they were helped out by some stupid decisions from both the ref and from Tim Weah, and I guess Greg Berhalter as well with his substitutions. But at the end of the day, I mean, they overcame the incredible odds, probably the best achievement in their national team's history. Huge props has to go to them, their team, the manager, everyone involved there. And I can't wait to see them play against Colombia, although they're probably going to get smacked. Uruguay, there's nothing to talk about. They did what we thought they would. 9 points out of 9, job done. They still look like probably the best team in the tournament, which is what a lot of people had predicted going into it. So that's that. The biggest disappointment by far being the USA, and the biggest overachievers being Panama.
Absolutely. Just want to touch on a point that is very sad. Besides Jamaica, who, let's be honest, are a complete mess, we were the worst CONCACAF team statistically. We got 3 points. Costa Rica held their own and got 4 points. I mean, respectable showing from them. They still ended up getting grouped. Mexico got 4 points. Panama made it through. Canada made it through. So very, very bad. A lot of pressure needs to be on Greg. But enough of that. Uruguay tops the group, and they're going to be playing what was very hard to call who would be second on this group. I mean, I won't even touch on my prediction. I would just say I was trolling. I was born in Brazil, never criticized Brazil. But anyways, it was Colombia topping this group. Any surprises were here? Do you think that Costa Rica maybe could have done more? They did. I feel like that was a very respectable showing by them, holding Brazil to a draw in the first match week, but then reasoned. So Colombia and Brazil make it through. What do you think about this one? Do you think that Colombia are still held in that regard of possibly the toughest one, the hardest team, best team to go all the way through, Brennan?
Well, you would have had a point if you had said Costa Rica to go through instead of Paraguay. I mean, it ended up coming down to the wire, and maybe it would have been honestly, if you had predicted them to go through, I still would have said that's a good prediction, because I think they, if it weren't for Panama, would have been the overachievers of this tournament, and I guess Venezuela as well. I don't think anybody expected Costa Rica to come out and get a result at all against Brazil. I think everyone had them getting smacked by both Colombia and Brazil. I think a lot of people even had them losing to Paraguay. And I think I may have said the same heading into the tournament. I don't exactly recall, but I think I did. I highlighted a lot of their team. They're, I think, one of the youngest teams in the tournament. So many young, promising players. When we did that Top 10 Wonder Kids to Watch video, I highlighted a couple of them. Jalen Mitchell, what a performance at the back, especially against Brazil. As a 19-year-old center back, to be going up against primarily Vinicius Jr., who is a Ballon d'Or contender, to get thrown out there onto that stage and hold your own, to have a great performance, get a clean sheet, it just shows so much quality, and he's getting rewarded for it too. He's apparently going to Feyenoord to join up with our best friend Santi Jimenez, who probably holds the Copa America record for most missed chances in a group stage. But incredible performance from him, and their other wonder kid winger Josimar Alcocer had an incredible goal as well in the last match against Paraguay, although it ended up not mattering. You said maybe that they could have done better. I think against Colombia, it was really their downfall. They needed to go out there and at least put up a fight. Losing 3-0 is definitely not ideal. And I mean, ultimately, they were kind of in a bad situation to begin with, because Brazil went up against Colombia on the final match day when Colombia didn't need anything. Brazil were fighting for their lives. Colombia, obviously, they were still fighting for pride and put up a good performance, but only they were happy to get by with a draw, top the group, and have Brazil go through as well. So ultimately, I think Costa Rica can hold their heads extremely high after this tournament. Incredible performance from them. No one would have backed them to get maybe even 3 points, let alone 4. And like you said, I think they performed better than the U.S. for sure, better than Jamaica. I think there's even an argument to be made that they performed better than Mexico just due to the quality of the opposition in the group. Maybe even Canada as well. I mean, Canada did go through, Costa Rica didn't. But again, if you look at the quality of the group, and Canada did only score one goal in the entire group stage, so I think there's a very real argument to be made that Costa Rica were actually the second best CONCACAF team of this tournament. Incredible performances from them. Brazil, obviously, a little bit underwhelming in the first match, but they came out really firing against Paraguay, got the job done in the end. I think it went how most people projected it to.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, props to Costa Rica. I think, and don't disrespect Canada. They scored one goal, but they're not done yet. That's what Jesse Marsh said. They're not done yet. They scored one goal in Copa America, and watch out. Everyone needs to be wary of the Maple Leaf merchants right there. Moving on right now to the knockout stage, the predictions. This is a fun bit. I think it's always better to predict knockout stage because then we have a little bit of a sample of what's going on in the tournament. Starting with that very, very easy, a cakewalk to the final for Argentina, the top bracket. They're going to be going up against Ecuador, who I think are a good side. But I'm just going to say very quickly my prediction, Argentina 2-1. I think they might struggle a little bit, but Ecuador have been underachieving. Who do you have on that first tie?
Definitely Argentina. I think this is one round sooner than they would have liked to go up against Ecuador because, like you said, they're a very good side, have provided a lot of challenges in the CONMEBOL World Cup qualifying to a lot of very good sides, but they just haven't been themselves in this tournament for whatever reason. The defense that I highlighted so heavily in our preview of the tournament that has been so good recently just hasn't been the same. They have actually scored goals, which was the one concern heading in. I think the defense and attack kind of reverse the roles, but ultimately they'll provide a little bit of a test. It won't be a cakewalk necessarily, but if you look at the other side of the bracket, Argentina definitely got the easier draw, and I think they will go through here.
Any score predictions for that one?
Oh, I'll go for a 3-1 for Argentina. Lautaro, our boy, coming off the bench again and scoring the dagger.
All right, and now to see who would meet Argentina in the semifinals, Venezuela against Canada. I'm actually going to pick something funny right here. I'll pick Canada to go through, even though I really like Soteldo. I should have said it earlier. I've always been a huge fan of Soteldo. If he was just a few inches taller, he would be in Europe, in my opinion. But maybe the sleeper pick right here, a very boring kind of you wouldn't imagine this matchup for a quarterfinal of Copa America, but who do you have going through? Venezuela against Canada. I'm going for a 1-0 Canada.
I think you can make the argument maybe that for more of the casual fans it would be boring because it's two national teams that don't have as big of names. But I think for like big football fans, it's going to be a very intriguing matchup. No one expected Venezuela to do what they did in the group stage. A lot of people, including myself, did not expect Canada to come out and even make it outside of the group. And same could even be said about Venezuela as well. I think this is going to be a very intriguing matchup to watch because Canada, kind of like Ecuador, reversed the roles. They were supposed to be so good on the attack and bad on defense, but it's been the exact opposite. Maybe them and Ecuador just swapped teams and no one noticed. It's definitely possible. And if so, that provides an advantage to Venezuela because they ended up beating Ecuador in the group stage. Salomon Rondon, the ageless wonder, and the Philadelphia Union killer as well, having an excellent tournament. 2 goals and an assist in the last game against Jamaica alone. He's definitely the player to watch here. And as good as Canada's defense and goalkeeper have been in this tournament, I feel like Rondon's experience and overall quality will get the better of them. He will score in this match. Jose Martinez at the 6 will get at least a yellow card. It's the banker. It happens every game for the Union. I'm expecting it to happen. He's going to slide tackle, take out Eustaquio or Jonathan David or someone, and really leave his mark on the match. I'm going to go for a 1-0 as well, but in favor of Venezuela.
All right. Well, I think that's a good prediction. I can definitely see it going both ways. Maybe it's the most intriguing matchup. Well, actually, we have Uruguay, Brazil, so that's the most intriguing. But a really nice props to both of these teams for making it this far. And hey, one of them is going to end up playing a semifinal. Honestly, crazy. Props to them. It's just how the bracket worked because now we have a very bottom-heavy bracket where we go to the blockbuster right here. It's Uruguay against Brazil. And I think this one's very tough to predict. And going a little bit against my trend, I actually, for some reason, think Brazil can put up a fight. But I'm going to go with a safe bet right here. 2-0 Uruguay. What do you think, Braden?
Well, I just realized that I could have had all 4 of the nations that are being represented in my background in the semifinals, but sorry, Canada, it's not your lucky day. but I'm going to go for Uruguay. I've got their flag hanging up. I think they are the best team in this tournament so far, at least by proving in the group stage. They didn't really seem to have any troubles, even against the U.S. when they really didn't have anything to fight for. They didn't even have Marcelo Bielsa on the sideline. They still got the job done. Now, we all know the goal was offside, but at the end of the day, I think overall you have to say the game went exactly how they wanted it to. They were kind of in control the entire time. They had the result locked up. And I just think Brazil are a bit of a shell of their former selves. They did have a very inspiring performance against Paraguay. I think they were pretty solid against Colombia as well. I think they definitely were respectable in that match. But at the end of the day, the job that needed to be done was winning that game. They didn't do it. And we all know how bad they were against Costa Rica as well. I think Uruguay have, I think there's an argument to be made that they might even have the better squad on paper. If you look at the talent gap, in years past, it would have been huge, especially recent years. If you look at the beginning of the century as well, I mean, we know the talent that comes out of Brazil, but Uruguay have an incredible generation. I think they're going to go into this as the favorites, and I ultimately back them to win this game. I'll go for a 2-1.
Yeah, I was gonna say I was going to change my prediction to 2-1, but I'll keep the 2-0 then, just to be a little bit different. And I absolutely agree. Valverde, Ugarte, and De Arrascaeta. Everyone in Brazil says that if Arrascaeta was at this point, you can pronounce his name in Portuguese, Arrascaeta. He's an honorary Brazilian. Everyone says he would start for Brazil. Everyone loves him there. Ugarte and Valverde are definitely better than João Gomes and whoever plays alongside him, in my opinion. Moving on right here to the matchup that we should be at, ideally. Colombia against the U.S. should be the other quarterfinal, but Panama find themselves in a position to go up against one of the favorites. Do you think that they can pull off an upset? I'm just going to be honest. I think it is a comfortable 4-1 win for Colombia.
Maybe it's a good thing that we didn't make it out because we saw what happened when the U.S. went up against Colombia in the pre-tournament friendly 5-1 embarrassment. I think this game could be very similar. I think Coco Carrasquilla will be suspended for this one as well. If I recall correctly, he got the same suspension as Tim Weah, 2 games, which basically ruins all their chances of going through. And it sucks for Panama. I mean, they have a lot of quality regardless, and I think there's even an argument to be made that they might have the better manager in this matchup. No disrespect to Colombia and their manager as well, but I think Christensen's done incredible things with this group. Unfortunately, this is where the run ends. Costa Rica ended up losing to Colombia 3-0. I think the exact same scoreline will happen here with Panama. I would have them on the score sheet, but without Carrasquilla, their main playmaker, I just don't see how they get it done. They got the job done against Bolivia, but it's Bolivia, probably the worst team in the entire tournament. So unfortunately, the run ends here, but what a tournament to be proud of for Panama. I think their entire nation will be applauding and serenading the team when they eventually arrive back home. Huge tournament for them, but it does come at the end of the road here against Colombia.
Yeah, nothing to be ashamed of. I mean, they have a great manager that seems to be really invested in the project as well. Was approached by Canada before they approached Jesse Marsh, and he decided to stay. Commend the guy for that. Would be nice to have a manager like him for the U.S. Stay tuned. We may have a video coming up talking about suitable options to replace Greg if what should happen happens. But now moving on right here to a very quick segment right here. Who is ahead in the race for predictions, Brady? I know I had some shockers in there. If you want to tell us what the scores are.
Yeah, I mean, and as a reminder to anyone who is watching this far into the video and actually participated in our prediction challenge that we did, the winner of this will end up getting a Copa America jersey of their choice from any nation that's participating in the tournament. I'll just start out with our predictions, how we're doing so far, because, I mean, we're the main event here. We both got 6 points or so, how we're tracking it, 6 correct teams going through. I will say that I had 4 of them exactly spot on. You had 3, so slightly up in that regard, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter when it comes down to that. And ultimately, we've been bested by some of our viewers. There are 4 people who had predictions that got 7 of the teams right. Like I mentioned when we talked about Group C, every single person in the challenge predicted USA to go through, whether it was in first or second. So no one gets a perfect group stage, unfortunately, due to the U.S. capitulation. Some people would have. But we have Austin, Vargoletos, Silly Goose, Samex, and Kurt Hines all with 7 points. So props to them. Some of them, three of them had five of them exactly spot on, and then the other one had four. But that's not really important. What is important is that three of the competitors, all of them but Austin, actually had the exact same final. So if that does end up happening, which was Colombia beating Argentina in the final, then it's going to get complicated and might have to go to some tiebreakers to determine the winner. Hopefully, for the sake of simplicity, that doesn't happen. Austin ended up having a Argentina beating Brazil final. So if that happens, I mean, I think we all know who the winner will be there. So best of luck to everyone. Maybe it's still anyone's game, even the people who don't have 7 points so far. But that's how it's looking so far. Props to everyone who's done better than us, and props to everyone who's entered as well.
Yeah, it's always fun to have this interaction, have it be a little bit more immersive with the fan base. Just want to thank you guys again for participating in this, and I think our tiebreaker right here will be Venezuela and Canada, Braden, because besides that, we've predicted the same. So, but it's not the official prediction that entered. But anyways, it's the end of the video. Sadly, we don't have anything to talk about the U.S. Stay tuned. We're gonna have more content coming up, including a through analysis and review of what happened with us. The USMNT Copa America analysis, unfortunately, is just 3 games to judge off. But make sure to leave a like, subscribe, share with your friends, and we'll see you next time.